Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well this morning. We are doing a live sourdough scoring session. So bear with me while I get a little bit set up. Today, I'm going to work on a black cocoa score. So I'm going to be using dusting the loaf with black cocoa powder, and that'll provide a lot of really wonderful contrast. Okay. If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop it in the comments section. I will do what I can to answer it, and it's sometimes hard for me to read while I'm scoring, but I will certainly try. If you are enjoying this score, go ahead and hit that little thumbs up button. So as usual, I have had this dough in the freezer for, I think it was about 45 minutes this time, or maybe 50 minutes. Whoops. This is my Now Designs bowl cover. It's got a polyurethane back, so it doesn't form a skin on the dough, which I really like. But I forgot to dust it with rice flour before putting the cover on, which is why I'm experiencing a little bit of sticking right now. This dough might be a little bit overproofed. It is definitely higher hydration than usual. So I'm just gonna, you can tell it's kind of drooping a little bit. I'm just gonna pinch it together here. Hopefully create a little bit more surface tension on the top of the dough when I turn it out. I did put it in my deep freezer in the hopes that it would freeze up a little bit, firm up really well, since I wasn't able to get it in at the hour mark. So once again, if you are enjoying this, hit that little thumbs up. It'll bring more people in, more questions. And this, like I said, it's higher hydration. This is actually an 80% hydration dough. So this is a lot higher than my usual. So you may notice that it'll start splaying a lot quicker than if you use a lower hydration dough. So I'm just gonna kind of tuck it, create a little bit more surface tension on the top, and hopefully kind of prevent the complete splaying of the dough. I think this might have to end up being a quicker score than my usuals, just because it's higher hydration. Okay, I'm just gonna dust off the white rice flour. I did dust it with white rice flour before popping it in the banneton. It just prevents the dough from sticking to the liner. And as you can tell, it's already starting to splay. And that's okay, you know. When you're dusting with black cocoa powder, you want to make sure that the dough is a little bit damp. It makes the black cocoa powder kind of adhere. It's a lot less messy. So I'm just taking a little bit of water from my bowl here and just rubbing it on the dough gently. And I also, before I start scoring the black cocoa, I always make sure I have a tea towel, a wet tea towel ready, because your hands are gonna be dirty. Well, covered in black cocoa, I should say, not dirty, but messy. Got my black cocoa here. Oops. You can certainly use regular cocoa powder, but then that leads to more of a brown dough. Now I just want to warn, in a couple minutes I will have to step out just to pull my baguettes out of the oven. So I've got a couple baguettes in there that are just browning up right now. I think it's got another 5 minutes or so in there. I'm not caking on the black cocoa powder. I don't want the flavor to be overpowering. Slap the dough. Oh, thank you for all the little gifts there. Much appreciated. Okay. Look at that. for the edges and the ends. People often ask if it's bitter. I have never found it to be bitter. I do find it sometimes has a little bit of a cocoa flavor, but I'm totally okay with that. And it's not overpowering. So you can still tell the dough continues to splay quite a bit. That's good. It's okay. We were anticipating that. How long do you ferment out of the fridge? So before putting it in the fridge, I fermented it for about 6 hours. That was at a room temperature of about 22 degrees Celsius, using my recipe with my quantity of starter, which is 200 grams of starter per 1,000 grams of flour. So it really just depends on the recipe that you're using and, you know, how warm it is in your environment. Oh, those are my baguettes. Give me just a moment, I'm gonna pull them out. Five more minutes. Okay, so for this design today, we're gonna be a little bit kind of abstract. I'm gonna start by drawing the expansion score line here with a skewer, just to know where I'm gonna be slicing it. And I'm gonna do the majority of the design over here, maybe a little bit over here, but honestly, I tend to forget about this side. All right. Is black cocoa different from normal cocoa? Yeah, it is. It is black. So as you can tell, it's quite, you know, I would say it's probably a very dark brown, but yeah, it's just a difference in the color. Okay, I had an idea and now I've kind of lost the concept. Let's see. I think we'll just do interesting little like shapes and lines over here. Okay. Maybe come on this side. I'm just basically drawing out what I plan to score. It makes it a lot easier for when I actually bring the blade to the dough to have an idea of what I'm doing. We could do wheat stalks, we could do, you know, repeating patterns. It doesn't really matter. I could do a nice little leaf design in here. I didn't come in today with a particular plan, basically. When I first started scoring, I used to sketch out what I would do every single time. But now I'm a little bit more easygoing. Let's see, what is the implement that you use to sift the cocoa or rice flour of your bread? Does it make a big difference than just shaking it from the bag? So yeah, especially with the black cocoa powder, I find that it gets quite clumpy. So it's better if you use like a miniature sieve. I find anyway. I mean, certainly do whatever you like. You could probably just sprinkle it from the bag. Just make sure you get rid of those big clumps. Then we'll probably just do a little wheat stalk all the way down here. Just because I guess having something on this side makes it look a little bit more even. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is just barely depressing on the blade. I'm gonna score this expansion score. This is where I'm going to score it when I pull it out of the oven. Do that really deep score. All right, now we're going to draw in these lines here. You don't have to do the lines. I mean, sometimes the skewered design is enough. Okay, how many stretch and fold sets do you do? Yeah. Thank you, Chris. You answered the question. My recipe is posted on YouTube. You can go check it out. You can check out my regimen. This one is not a 72% hydration, which is what I usually do. I decided to just throw caution to the wind and went straight to an 80%. I did notice, like, I don't actually think that my flour is able to kind of handle super high hydration. I noticed with my boule that I was shaping that the top of the dough just kept kind of tearing, which indicated to me that, you know, the gluten needs to be more developed, but at the same time, I think I did 5 or 6 coil folds, and it just didn't seem to kind of want to go further. So I think this particular flour does really well with the kind of medium to lower hydration percentages. Okay. Oh, my baguettes, once again. See how they are. And they look really good. I'm going to show them to you. It smells really good in here. I'll show you the baguettes here and then I'll continue the score. Look how pretty they look. Fresh out of the oven. I'm going to pop them on the cooling rack and I will slice into them later. And I have not shared my baguette recipe. That is something that I continue to work on, also struggle through. Baguettes it's one of those things that's just one of the most challenging things for a baker, I find anyway. I think I've done baguettes like 150 times, and I'm trying to get that really nice lacy crumb with them, but I am struggling. But I will not give up. Okay. Ran out of einkorn. The loaf with 100% bread flour was so much better. You will find that with 100% bread flour, you'll probably get more of a rise. The more of the whole grain stuff that you put in your dough, the less of oven spring that you'll get. So that's the start of the pattern. I actually think it looks pretty good like that, but as you guys may know, I don't like blank spaces. So I'm going to fill in all of these lines. Okay, here I go. I'm going to start with wheat stalks. Ooh, I wish I had frozen the dough a little bit longer. You can tell that it needs a little bit more time in the freezer based on the fact that the dough is really tugging as I'm scoring. We'll do scissors and then dots, and then we'll do wheat. So we'll just do wheat, scissor, dot, wheat. That's the pattern that I'm going to do. And it's a favorite of mine, something that I've been doing for years now. I mean, I froze the dough, I think, for 45 minutes. And for higher hydrations, you do want to freeze it for longer. So, if you're enjoying this, hit the little thumbs up button. It helps to bring in more people, and that is always appreciated. And feel free to ask anything in the question box. I'm open to answering questions. Okay, we'll do a wheat stalk in here. Curved wheats can be a little bit of a challenge. I'm going deep with the blade, like as deep as I can with these wheats, but you want to keep those strokes really short. Okay, let's see if there are any questions in here. It did not notify me. Very bummed. Well, it's only been 15 minutes. Is freezing just for making scoring easier, or does it affect rise and whatnot? Nope, it does not affect rise. It literally just makes it easier for scoring. This wheat is a little bit uneven. always excited to see how these turn out, my scores. Okay, now we're gonna do, oh, actually I'm gonna do this wheat stock over here. The one thing about using black cocoa and not freezing for as long is that you can really see the dough kind of open up as you're scoring, which I do really enjoy that aspect, but it does make it a little bit more challenging to score. You can see it's really snagging. You want to keep those cuts brief. Quick. All right, now we're going to do some scissors. How often do you change the blade? Does it have to be super sharp? So I have used this blade once. I used it last week. I will probably change it out the next time I score, just because I find it that much more, like it dulls the blade a lot faster when you're using a wetter dough, which this is definitely wetter. So I'm just gonna use my nice little trusty scissors here to add little cubes. What's the brown? It's black cocoa powder. I really like using black cocoa powder. Okay. Scoring is amazing. Well, I'm glad you are enjoying it. Maybe I'll show you another technique on the other side here. I'm using scissors to create a bit more of a chevron type appearance. This kind of makes it look a little bit like teeth, but if you go along here and you kind of angle your blade, as opposed to coming at it like vertically, like perpendicular to the dough, you come at it almost flat against the dough and you can kind of create a little like chevron type appearance. Kind of looks like scales. I actually do not want these sticking up, so I'm gonna just push them down. That's gonna be sharp on the mouth when it bakes. So I'm just gonna push them down and hope that they don't expand too much. Okay, now I'm gonna take my skewer here and I'm just gonna add some little pokes. I do find with the black cocoa that the dots don't show up as well. So I'm actually going to go with the back side of the skewer, and instead of actually poking in, I'm just going to twist. Oops. So even now you can tell it's not showing up as well as with the rice flour. It's also because it's wet. The cocoa powder is wet, so it's not actually, you know, removing the cocoa from the dough while I do this, whereas it does that with the rice flour because I don't wet the dough before I apply the rice flour. The benefits of wetting the dough before applying cocoa is that your hands won't get super messy when you cut into it, and the powder's not going to fly everywhere. Okay. Kind of wish I'd done something else instead of the dots. They're really not showing up. I might add another detail. We'll see. That looks pretty cool, as is, though. Let's see, do I want to do anything else or just kind of leave it like that? I might just leave it like that. So now the dough is, oh, you can tell it's really splayed over the parchment paper. It's okay. Okay, let's see if I can get this on here without making a complete mess. Oop. There we go. I'm gonna bake this in my Forno Grande oven, pop it in for 7 minutes, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do a deep expansion score right here. Okay, so I'm gonna pop it in now. Okay. So I do bake my sourdough breads in my Forno Grande oven. Oops. Hello, friends. So the dough is going to go in the oven for 7 minutes. Then I'm going to pull it out and do the expansion score. So while we wait, I will answer any questions that come up. Let's see. If you do not use a Dutch oven, Oh, I do use a Dutch oven. I use a Forno Grande, well, it's like a bread cloche. It's like a semicircular, like tubular kind of design. And it has a little hatch. It's made of cast iron and there's a baking stone underneath. It's great. Every single time I am just talking up the Forno Grande. I have so many. I have like 3 cast iron Dutch ovens. I have the Challenger bread pan and I have my Forno. The Forno Grande oven just stays in the oven. That's it. That's what I use. I love it. What was the dark stuff on the top of the dough? It was black cocoa powder. Yeah, it's really good. Adds really nice contrast. It doesn't really impact the flavor that much. I do notice it, but it's not, I don't find it detrimental to the flavor. Like, it's not bitter. Let's see if there are any other questions that I've missed. Where do you get the long sticks to make the design? They're just wooden skewers. I think you can get them at any grocery store. What is the longest time your loaves stay in the freezer before scoring? I wouldn't push it much beyond an hour and 15 minutes, if I'm being honest. I've done an hour and a half, and I had to pull it out and let it kind of almost thaw a little before scoring it, because it was just too firm. Like, you won't be able to get the blade to break the skin of the dough. I freeze it for usually about 60 minutes. Is there a sort of pattern to how many stretch and folds, coil fold sessions, and how hydrated it is? Like, higher hydration means more stretches, coils. Yes. Yep. I find with higher hydration, you need to spend more time developing the gluten, just so it doesn't tear. Because if the wetter the dough, the higher likelihood it is going to tear. So you have to do gentle coil folds to kind of slowly develop the gluten for higher hydrations. Have you used beet powder or turmeric? I have used turmeric externally. No, I haven't used beet powder. I've used beet juice inside the dough. Like, I've made a focaccia with beet juice. It's good, but it kind of baked up brown as opposed to red. I think you have to add like vitamin C powder to retain that color. Feel free to ask questions. What is the best flour to use for a sourdough starter? So the recipe that I followed, I think it was either starting with a whole wheat or rye. I can't remember. Yeast and bacteria really like rye flour. They grow really well with rye. So what I did is I started with rye, and then once it was growing well, I did a slow transition to an all-purpose, and now I have an all-purpose starter, which started as a rye starter. I've tried coil folds, but it did rip the surface after a while, so I'm assuming that's too many coil folds. No. If you're finding that it's starting to rip, you're raising it too high. You really want to avoid tearing the dough at all. So if you're noticing that it's starting to rip, gently bring it down and then turn it and do the other side. the more you do those coil folds, the more the gluten's going to develop, the stronger the dough is going to get. It's not too many coil folds. You just have to be gentler with your dough. Made your focaccia recipe again. Seems to be on repeat in my house. Yeah, it's such a good recipe. I love it. And like, I really like that I can bake it in the morning. You can make it like a breakfast focaccia if you want. You can have like cooked sausage and fried onions or, you know, herbs. Really good. I've done like an apple cinnamon focaccia. That's a nice little breakfast treat. Highly recommend. If the dough is shaggy and the blade catches on the dough, does that mean it's too high hydration or what's the problem? I mean, a really wet dough is going to catch on the blade. If it's really bothering you, then just pop it in the freezer. 30 to 60 minutes. I usually kind of err on the longer side. I add a few grams of rye every once in a while to keep it strong. Interesting. I have never done that before. I've never felt the need to do that. I've got a really healthy strong starter, so it works. It does really well with my all-purpose feedings. Oh no, I missed the score. What type of flour mix did you use? It's my usual recipe, but I did a higher hydration. So I used my bread flour and einkorn flour. I dusted the top with black cocoa powder. Ooh, let's check the time. 55 seconds. Okay. Let's see. What differences have you found between using your starter when it was rye versus when it was all-purpose? Well, I didn't bake with the rye starter at all. I transitioned it to an all-purpose starter. Can I make sourdough starter? Absolutely, I certainly hope so. Check this out. It smells really good. It's a nice baguette. Okay. Set the timer here. I'm gonna check on the dough and see if a nice skin has formed. I'll show you my Forno Grande oven. This is it. Oh, look at that. Beautiful skin has formed on the dough. Oh, it's splaying, that's for sure. Okay. I'm gonna take it back over here. And I'm gonna do the expansion score. You guys can watch that. And it's gonna go in the oven for about 25 minutes or so. I'm gonna set you up. Okay, I hope you guys are able to see okay. Okay. So just gonna score in here, the expansion score. Look at that. It's growing really well, holy moly. Okay. I'm going as deep as I can go. You can see the dough, the wet dough in there. Okay, it's gonna go back in the oven, and I am actually gonna put a little bit of water. I'm gonna introduce some water into the bread cloche. It's not gonna steam away the design because it's made with black cocoa. So I'm just putting a little bit of water in here. Close it up. And I set the timer for 20-25 minutes. Okay. All right. What is the protein content in your bread recipes? In my flour, my bread flour is 12.5% protein content, I believe. Do you go straight down the middle because you don't want any air? That actually wasn't straight down the middle. That was on the to the side a little bit. You'll see when I pull it out of the oven. It was on the side. I do like straight down the middle scores. I don't know. A lot of people don't, and I don't know why. I think people are just obsessed with that ear, but I don't know. I don't really care so much about the ear as I do about the design. Okay. Let's see here. I want to make sure I haven't missed any questions. If you're enjoying this, then give me a thumbs up. In 20 or so minutes, we're gonna pull the dough out of the Forno Grande. I'm sorry, what I meant was I'm trying to break down gluten with my cold ferment, but after 12 hours, my loaf was overproofed. So I would recommend shortening your bulk fermentation time, the time that it is at room temperature. If you want to do a longer fridge ferment, you're going to have to shorten the bulk fermentation time. Is 14% too much protein in bread flour? No, it'll just be a stronger dough. I use light rye for my starter, very strong, and just needs 1 feed out of the fridge. Always smells very acetone though. Do I need to worry about that? So, I mean, I would recommend changing the ratio of your feeds. A lot of people do a 1-to-1-to-1 feeding ratio, and I just don't find that works for me. I find that it makes the starter quite sour. So I would recommend maybe doing a 1-to-5-to-5 feeding ratio or more. Like sometimes I just take the scrapings of the bottom of the sourdough jar, which is just like a few grams, and I'll put in like 200 grams of flour and 200 grams of water. I find that, yeah, it makes for a milder starter, and you won't get that kind of acetone smell. Like even after the starter had been in the fridge for a week, I pulled it out. I had put it in when it was at peak, and when I pulled it out a week later, it didn't really smell overly sour. There was definitely like a scent to it. It was really pleasant though. It was really pleasant and mild. But that's my preference. I don't like my sourdoughs to be overly sour. Okay, let's see. Hello from Moonaki, Greece. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Do you just pour hot water into the bottom of your Forno for steam? Yeah, there's a little tiny pitcher that they give you when you buy the Forno Grande, and at the bottom, the baking stone has like a little channel that you can pour the water into. So it's a really, really well thought out design for, your home baker who's only baking, a couple loaves a week. Okay. I don't know what that says. That's in another language. Looks like Arabic. I don't read Arabic, I'm sorry. Okay. So let me see. I plan on sharing a sourdough pizza recipe. I'm hoping to work on editing that tomorrow. It's been a few months, and I know people have been very keen on my sourdough pizza recipe. It's good. It's really good. When did you start baking? God, when I was a child. I've been baking since I was like 8 or 9 years old, just helping my mom in the kitchen. Baking sourdough, I'm a pandemic sourdough baker. So I started in April 2020. Yep. Just joined. Your sourdough video helped calm my anxiety this morning. That's wonderful. I find that sourdough is really therapeutic, and it helps to calm me as well. I find in particular when I am like handling the dough, and also when I'm scoring. I find scoring to be really, really relaxing. If you enjoy watching it, you'd probably enjoy doing it too. Do you bake your baguettes in the Forno? I do. Yeah. I do. I shouldn't say they're not full baguettes. They are demi baguettes, and 2 fit in the Forno at one time. I usually do a batch of 4 demi baguettes at once. Do you prefer sourdough pizza over biga pizza? I don't know that I've ever had biga pizza, yeah. I've never made a biga. So yeah, I like my sourdough pizza. I bake it in my gas-fired pizza oven. It's the Gosney. rock box. It's really good. Special pan that I bake it in my Forno Grande. I'm glad you find my voice calming. Okay. What else? Pizza recipe, please. I'm working on it. My motivation for uploading a YouTube video is always very, very low. It's a lot more work than editing a short or a reel. Baguette special pan. No, I bake it in my Forno. So I use the Forno Grande tray lined with parchment paper. Okay. Yeah, I'm working on another recipe. It's a blueberry cream cheese roll. It's really good. Can you do pizza in a home oven? Yeah, you sure can. I did pizza in my home oven for a long time before I had my gas-fired Gosney Rockbox. You're not going to get the same texture of the dough. Like, you may find that the dough is a little bit kind of harder from the conventional oven. Make a peach cake. My sourdough pizza dough is always too slack relative to my bread, so looking forward to your tutorial. Oh, interesting. Perhaps you're using a higher hydration sourdough pizza recipe? I don't know. What do you mostly take as a side for bread? I mean, I like a sandwich. I like a Vietnamese banh mi sandwich. So good. That's like the best sandwich you can have. My bread is very dense. What am I doing wrong? It's proofing. That's a proofing issue. I'm guessing you're underproofing it. So you need more time. Just wanted to let you know I've used several of your designs. Of course, everybody was amazed. Oh, good. I did make sure to give you credit. You were amazing. Love the detail. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. And thank you for using credit, putting credit as well. Where do you get your stencils for sourdough? Example, your Christmas tree. I actually ended up kind of drawing it out. I saw one on Etsy. I saw one that was similar, but I ended up just kind of drawing my own and adding my own details to that. Do you have mods? No, I should have mods. Oh. I probably need some mods on here, eh? Banh mi is so good. Oh, so good. Like, if you haven't had a banh mi sandwich, you're missing out. So much better than your like typical American sub. There's so much more flavor, texture. I want to make bread, but not sourdough. Then you can look up like a regular kind of yeasted bread recipe. Speak Italian? No, I do not. Any recommendations for culinary students that can't afford Dutch ovens? I know, they're expensive. I mean, you can probably find a lot secondhand, especially now that the like pandemic's been over for a while. I imagine that all of those sourdough bakers are probably looking to clear out their kitchen of all the, the supplies they bought. So you can probably look on like Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. I'm sure people are selling Dutch ovens. Or you can do an open tray bake. That's an option too. I did that before I got a Dutch oven. It was not particularly successful, as in I never really got a really good ear, and I found it hard to kind of inoculate the dough with steam because I've said it before, my oven just bleeds steam out the back. So the Dutch oven was the only thing that worked for me, but I know a lot of people that do the tray bakes. So go on Google and search open tray bake sourdough, and you'll find a lot of tips about that. There's also an Instagram creator called Foodie Brian, FOODIE _BRYAN. He does massive bakes, and he does tray bakes all the time. So I think he puts a tray of water at the bottom of the oven. Do you bake bread on fire? I did try. I tried, I think, a couple years ago, baking over a campfire. It did not go well. There's so little kind of temperature control in that. So yeah, I had nice coals, but I don't know if I just didn't preheat the Dutch oven long enough. The bottom ended up burnt. The top was like not big. It was inedible. Inedible. Favorite book? Like cookbook, like sourdough cookbook. I guess The Perfect Loaf. That's a good one. Favorite book in general? I like a lot of fantasy books. What was it like to have your video short go viral? So it depends. So like my YouTube sewing sourdough one went viral and people were really divided. Actually, same with on Instagram too. People were really divided about that video in general because it's like purely aesthetic. It's like, what's the point? And everybody was like, why are you doing this? What's the point? Why aren't you using an edible string? Like, whatever. I just kind of ignore the comments. Okay. You mentioned that this loaf is about 80%. What hydration do you typically use? Typically around 72 to 75. Antique stores are full of lodged Dutch ovens for cheap. Yeah, I mean, certainly you can find them at secondhand stores. How did you learn to bake? Practice. I haven't had any formal baking education. Daughter got one for $50 at Walmart. Wow. Okay, that's a good price. Yeah. That's 20 meals for me. Oh, yeah. I guess that's expensive, but I've seen them for like 120 to like $200 here. It's expensive. Please bake bread on fire in the future. Looking for another failure. Okay. Let me take a look here. Let's see how this bread is. I'm a little bit concerned about the rise of this bread. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. Just because it's higher hydration and it, I don't know. I think the score will look nice, but I don't know how the rise will be because it was hard for me to get some nice surface tension. So what I'm going to do, it has been 14 minutes. By the time I open it, it will have been 15 minutes. I'll pull it open. I will show it to you so you can see what the score looks like after it's been baked for a little bit. And then I will conclude my live. So if you guys have questions, pop them in now. You're pretty. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. All right. We're going to take a peek. Flip you over. Ooh. All right, let's take a look. Looking not bad, eh? Got a nice little ear. Decent rise. I think it's kind of leaning on the overproofed side. But look at that pretty ear. I don't know, my hand's in the way. Looks pretty good. Slide that back in there. I'm gonna keep it in there for another, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe, and then I'll pull it out and it'll spend 15 minutes or so in the open oven to crisp it up a little. Yeah, it's a nice ear. It's either not had enough, dough development, strengthening to the loaf, or it's a little bit overproofed. And we'll find out when I cut into it. I think maybe it might be a little bit of both. I also do not get the ear. Is that because of not proofing enough? Okay, I'll start with the first question. Why do you think overproofed? Just by the rise, and also when I shaped it last night, it was a little bit harder to handle. There were a lot of bubbles that were kind of deflating as I was shaping it. And I find that if the alveoli are like rapidly deflating as I'm shaping it, it usually means it's overproofed. How can you tell it's leaning to an overproofed, or what makes you think? Well, yeah, I just explained that. And then when I cut it open, we will kind of have an idea, you know, if it's a little bit kind of saggy, if the air pockets are a little bit kind of more flattened, then you can tell it's on the overproof side. Has your bread ever hit the top of the forno? No, but it's been very close. Like, I think probably like a couple millimeters. I also do not get the ears. Is that because of not proofing enough? So it's a number of factors. It could be proofing, could be shaping. It could be the fact that maybe you're not inoculating with enough steam when you're baking it. How many times did you fold it? So I do 1 stretch and fold, usually 3 to 4 coil folds. This one I ended up doing, I think, 1 stretch and fold and about 4 or 5 coil folds, because it's such high hydration, I needed to spend more time developing the dough strength. Never knew you were so beautiful. Oh, thank you. Do you always have the forno in the oven, or do you take it out when you're not baking bread? I only take it out if I need the oven for something else. Otherwise, it just stays there. I'm not lifting that out. It's heavy, and yeah, it just stays in there. I seem to overproof a bit. I'm in higher altitude, dry climate. Oh, interesting. I always thought higher altitude was resulted in slower proofing, but maybe I'm wrong. Scoring at an angle helps to get an ear. Yeah, absolutely. Scoring. Yeah, you want to also make sure you're scoring deep enough. Okay. If there are any final questions, pop them in here. If not, I'm going to conclude the live. I'll stay here another 30 seconds, and you can ask your questions. And then if there are none, I'll wrap things up. I really appreciate all of you hopping on here and asking your questions and participating and watching the score. If you use a Dutch oven, do I need to throw an ice cube? So when I'm scoring with white rice flour, I don't inoculate with any steam at all because I find it steams off the design. But if I'm doing black cocoa powder or just a plain loaf, then yeah, I do inoculate with steam. I pour in a little bit of water in the channel of my Dutch oven. Okay. Well, thank you all. I hope you all have a lovely Monday. Bye.